In this video, I will cover some Unity basics and go over the contents of the skeleton project. This is the platformer skeleton project, which essentially contains a character controller that can move in a platformer environment, a level to move around, and some art assets I download for free on the internet. The character controller is from Brackeys, who creates excellent Unity tutorials. So if you're new and you want to expand on this project, then I definitely would check that channel out. Great, so starting with Unity, there are some important windows to understand. First is the scene window, which is probably the first window you'll see. And this is where all the content of your game is built and organized into playable levels. The game window, this is the game view is what the player will see when they play your game. You can set the aspect ratio of your game view. Usually I set it to 16:9. This only affects the window, not the final aspect ratio of your game. The hierarchy window outlines everything that exists in the scene. The inspector will reveal the components of a game object. So different game objects you select will have different components, and you can see what they are in the inspector. And finally, the project window is where all your projects are stored. You will store your art, your code, audio, and other files here. Let's go to the scene view. At the top, you can press play to test the game out. Unity will darken, and then you can now use your keyboard to control the player. Try pressing the WASD or D keys to move around, and space to jump. Just press play again to stop. Alright, let's look at the scene. So we can do that by looking visually in the scene, or we can look in the hierarchy. So in the hierarchy, we have a bunch of objects in here. So this is everything, again, this is everything in the scene. So first we have the camera. If you click on this, you can see there's a camera component. This is what renders the game view. You also see there's a CM-VCam1 object. This object is controlling the camera, so it's kind of like a dual system. That might be a little confusing. But if you want to edit the properties of the camera, edit it through CM-VCam1. So there's also the player. And this game object contains all the functionality of the controllable player. So if you click on it and you look into the inspector, you'll see there are some components. There's the colliders, which provide collision detection. There's actually two on them, on the player. The rigid body applies physics to the player, so it can move and collide. Then there's the character controller, which is the scripted functionality of the player. This is where input is taken in and processed. And you can edit the values of the character controller as you'd like. So back in the hierarchy, if you press the arrow to expand on the player, you'll see there are some child game objects. There are some check ones. Those are just for collision detection, but the important one is player sprite, which renders the pixel art. And it contains the animator, which controls the sprite animation. Okay, and then finally level contains all the art and boundaries of the main level. So you'll see mount boundaries, which are two colliders, grid, which is, if you expand on that, that's the tile sets. There's the backgrounds and props, like trees and bushes. Alright, let's come out of the scene. So that's everything that goes into the playable game. Let's look at the project window. So again, this is where all your game files are stored. The assets folder is the root folder of your project. There are some files here in the asset folder, as you can see. You have some folders and some miscellaneous files. One of these miscellaneous files is the script, the character controller script. So that's the actual code. If you double click on that, it will open up your Visual Studio. There's also a prefab of the player, so that's the actual player that you can drag into the scene, or you can drag into another scene. So it's already set up for you. There's some other things too, but I won't cover them. The scene folder contains all the scenes of your game. The art folder contains all the art files as well as animations. I've imported an environmental level art pack and a character art pack with animations.